Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and a very warm welcome to this new Fellows Admissions Day, one of the high spots in the Academy calendar. So even though it's slightly damp and grizzly outside, it's Wimbledon weather, it's going to be warm and very celebratory inside because we're here to celebrate the talents and achievements of a number of distinguished people. If I can introduce myself, I'm Robert Lechler. I have the privilege of being the president of this academy. And I know that not all of you will know everything that you might like to know about the academy, so let me very briefly introduce us to you. We are the independent body in the UK representing the diversity of medical science, and our mission is to advance biomedical and health research and its translation into benefits for society. We've recently refreshed our strategy, and I'm sure copies of that new strategy will be available for you if you're interested. But if you care to read it, you'll see that we've committed ourselves to the following: to secure a future in which, number one, the UK and global health is improved by the best research. Number two, that the UK leads the world in biomedical and health research and is renowned for the quality of its research outputs, talent, and collaborations. Three, to ensure that independent, high-quality medical science advice informs the decisions that affect society. And fourthly, that more people have a say in the future of health and research. So that is who we are. But before we get on to the main business of the afternoon, which is the admission of the fellows, let me, if I may, make a few remarks about the year past and looking ahead. And I'm going to put those remarks under four headings, and I shall be very brief, I promise you, under each of them. The first one is some comments on context. And I doubt if anybody in the audience would wish to disagree with the following statement, that the last year has been one of unprecedented turbulence in the political environment in which we operate. So it started almost to a day a year ago, when this meeting was held a few days after the referendum result on leaving the EU. So it began with that, and the very day, the 24th of June, when we got that result, I woke up with a rather heavy heart and had to go straight off to Israel on behalf of the Academy to talk about UK life sciences. The only thing anybody wanted to talk about was Brexit. Then came the US election, again with a rather surprising result, and a somewhat unpredictable occupant of the White House now to respond to. Then, of course, there have been the very distressing terrorist attacks in Manchester and London. And then when we thought everything was settled down, an election was called to create greater stability. And that isn't exactly what happened. So that was the political scene, and within that political context, a lot of churn has been going on in terms of the structure and the shape of research funding. So the Higher Education Research Bill was passed on the last day of parliamentary business before the shutdown for the election campaign. That means that UK Research and Innovation, the new agency sitting over the 7 research councils, now is coming into existence. The Industrial Strategy Challenge Fund has been established. The industrial strategy the government is committed to has a very prominent component of the life sciences strategy in it. So there's a huge amount of change to adapt to and to make work. And it's crucial, therefore, in the midst of this turbulence, that we contribute as an academy to providing a clear and consistent set of messages to government to ensure that UK biomedical research continues to perform at the outstanding level that it has done and to thrive. So that's the first set of comments about context. The second comments are just to reassure those of you engaged with the Academy that the Academy is responding to and engaging in those challenges as actively as we are able to do. And so focusing initially on the Brexit challenge, the 4 academies, and I should say that the 4 national academies are working, I think, better together than they ever have done to date. The 4 academies have had a chance to meet with David Davis, the Minister for exiting the EU, twice, and we're also part of Joe Johnston's Brexit working group. And I think we're each speaking the same language. When I talk about these sets of issues, I talk under 4 Ps, and those Ps are people, by far the most important of the four, in my view, and I think the other academies, and I hope you would agree with that we can create a future or ensure a future where we can continue to attract the world's best talent to come and work in the UK and retain our continental European colleagues currently working with us in the UK. The second P is partnerships, so that's collaborative activities with other countries, not least Europe, and not only Europe, and I'll come back to that. The third P is pounds. That's the money aspect, not the most important, but it's important that we get our relationship with EU funding streams optimized as we move forward. And the final P is permissions. That really is regulation, but regulation doesn't start with P. So regulation is about ensuring that we harmonize our clinical trials regulations as far as possible with continental Europe, but also to continue to consider the agility dividend that Brexit might afford us of positioning ourselves as the go-to place for early phase trials, where the UK is probably better than anywhere else in the world for intelligent regulation. So one other remark in relation to the European issue. You may not have heard of something called FEME, which is a Federation of European Academies of Medicine, but it exists, and it's run into a little difficulty recently in terms of leadership and staffing, and so we volunteered to provide support, and indeed were allocated £250,000 by the Department for Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy to support the FEME office, and so we're now doing that, populating that office in Brussels. Now, to be part of FEME, you don't have to be an EU member country, so we can continue to be part of FEME, whatever happens with Brexit. But I think it's a particularly attractive set of developments at the time that we're trying to secure and strengthen, indeed, our relationships with Europe, that we've been able to take on that role with FEME. And the final aspect with FEME is that our current Vice President International, George Griffin, has just been elected as the next president of FEME, so that gives us another connection. And the European academies feed into providing advice to the Science Advisory Mechanism in the EU, which adds to their significance. So that's what the Academy's been doing in relation to Europe. My third heading is briefly about opportunities, because we seek to be an opportunities-orientated academy. And I think there are some exciting opportunities in front of us, not least because we continue to have a government that is committed to research and science and R&D. And that was evidenced by, several months ago, the government committing an additional £2 billion per annum to its funding of R&D. And you'll notice in the manifestos of the major parties, all of them committed to raising the total level of R&D spend in the UK up to the OECD average, because you may know that despite our extraordinary strong performance, we have been underfunded. And Joe Johnson just yesterday in a statement to Parliament recommitted to that manifesto commitment, and we will work to hold the government to that commitment. I think that the life sciences strategy component of the industrial strategy is also an opportunity, and it's great that in terms of the industrial strategy being rolled out, probably the first cab off the ranks will be the life sciences component of that industrial strategy, with which many of you in the room, I'm sure, are also engaged. And core to that has been a past president of this academy, John Bell, and I think we should all thank him for the sterling work that he's doing in shaping that. And this strategy will be coming out for consultation, we think, in July, and has many really positive recommendations in it. And then the third and final point under opportunities is that if I'm looking for one positive dividend out of this Brexit process, then perhaps it is that it's made us put more energy and focus into international partnering than historically we've done. We've realized that we are such an international community, and that our international links are so important. Never have I been more conscious of that. And so I think that there may be fresh ways of strengthening international partnerships, maybe fresh funding arrangements, even partnership funding with funding agencies in other countries. And just as one example, Helen and Liz Bohm from the Academy and I went out to visit the US equivalent, the National Academy of Medicine, used to be called the Institute of Medicine. A number of you will know the president, Victor Zhao. And they were very enthusiastic about the idea of joint working with us, and so much so they're coming back on a return visit in December when we'll discuss things that we can do together again to strengthen our international links. So my fourth and final heading, before I close these remarks, is just a word about the new strategy I referred to a moment ago. So essentially the new strategy in large part is just an evolution of what we have been doing, and I think that's entirely appropriate because I think the Academy has been doing the right things for a number of years and doing them very effectively. So much of it is just an evolution onto the next stage of our journey, but there are some new initiatives in it, and I wanted to mention those for your interest and indeed subsequently for your critical comment. So the first is to develop a new leadership program that we think will be unique, unlike anything else that's offered anywhere else, certainly in this country, if not internationally. And that's a leadership program to train people to work across the interface between academe, NHS, and industry. And it will do that by taking people onto the program from those three sectors and them going through a leadership training scheme together with deliberate immersion in the two sectors from which they don't come. And I think this will generate a cohort of people equipped to lead clusters, making those interfaces work to maximum advantage. So that's one thing that's under development, and Martin Humphreys, our current Vice President, Basic Science, is leading that. The second new initiative is a horizon scanning set of activities where we'll be going around the country doing horizon scanning with fellows, and indeed I hope some early career researchers, asking the question, what are the challenges that new technology and that science is bringing into our pathway that we need to get on the front foot and think about? If this had existed 2 years ago, then genome editing would be an obvious one that we would have found ourselves focusing on. So I think this will be a very energizing exercise. There'll be about 6 sessions around the country. It'll involve fellows from all regions and will inform our policy work going forward. Third new initiative, which kind of links in some way to that second one, is that we will be planning a small number, maybe 2 a year, of scientific meetings with a difference. And the difference will be that they will deliberately and explicitly bring disciplines together that don't normally work together. And so many of the challenges facing modern medicine, I think you would agree, require disciplines to work together that historically have not done so. And so we hope these meetings will catalyze exactly that. And then finally, we seek to further develop our voice, becoming a modern, accessible, and diverse academy, diversity in all its forms. So I'm very excited about the new strategy. I hope that I've communicated some of that to you, and will invite you to comment as we move forward with it. So let me then turn to today's main business, which is the admission of new fellows. This is so important because the Academy essentially is made up of its fellowship, and it's the fellows that make the Academy what it is. It's the quality of the fellows that give us the credibility and the authority that we have and the influence we have, and that's why it's such a huge privilege to lead it. Now, election to the fellowship, and that's particularly, I'm saying this for the benefit of family and friends who are here, is fiercely competitive. There are 380 people in the pool endeavoring to get elected, and we elect 46 fellows each year. And so today's new fellows are a very welcome addition to the Academy, and can I offer my personal congratulations to all of you. And without further ado, could I invite Professor Philippa Saunders, the Registrar of the Academy, onto the stage to read the citations. Thank you.